we go. All right. Rob, let's start with the third step prayer, sir.
Okay. Hey, everybody. My name is Rob. I am a recovered alcoholic, and we're going to start with the third step prayer, which is on page 63 of your big book. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
Excellent. All right. And as we had been talking earlier, we are on page 55. Then we'll go up one paragraph where it says, yet that's very top paragraph, yet we had been seeing. Rob?
Okay, page 55, everybody. And welcome, everybody. If you have any questions or comments that you need, put them in the chat. Leo and Bill usually take questions at the end of the meeting. So if you have any questions, just write them down and we'll get to them at the end of the meeting. So, top of page 55. Yet we had been seeing another kind of flight, a spiritual liberation from this world. People rose above their problem. They said God made these things possible, and we only smiled. We had seen spiritual release, but like to tell ourselves it wasn't true.
Yeah. So we're working on watching other people actually have success with this spiritual experience and having the reaping the benefits of that and the good feelings that come with it. The At this point in time, this as an individual, we keep telling ourselves it wasn't true. We really don't know what they were talking about, so we're trying to learn that as we go along. But at any rate, this is where we are basically as a bystander watching this happen to other people. Rob?
Yeah, we agnostics. Bill is trying to slowly bring us along to come to believe, to throw away our old ideas, our old prejudices, okay, contempt prior to investigation, come up with a new conception of what God is. Remember, a lot of us came in here with ideas that God from our childhood. God is a punishing God. God wants to control us. Okay, God doesn't want the best for me. They just want to control me. Okay, so we have to throw out our old ideas and come up with a new set of ideas of what God is in our life. Yeah, I was in a meeting yesterday and they were talking about misconceptions about the big book. And they started talking about, step two, and, we can't come to believe in a power greater than ourselves, etc. And their idea was that to write down, what do you want in a God or a sponsee? What would you have your God be? Now, you might not believe it at the time that God is these things. But what we do is we ask for these things. That's what we want our God to be. What do we want God to be in our life? Somebody that's going to be there 24/7, that when I have a problem, I can go to them. And they talked about, people who come into the fellowship and they believe that a light bulb or a doorknob, can be their higher power. No, it can't. And somebody told a great story, and they said that they were in a meeting and somebody believed that a doorknob was their higher power. And the next week they went to walk out the door and the doorknob fell off, which I thought was quite humorous. And so did they. But, we need somebody that we can go to 24/7, somebody that's going to be there, somebody that's got our back, that wants nothing but the best for us. This next line that I'm going to be reading, we always are looking for where do we find God? Newcomers always want to know, where do we find God? Is he out here? Where is he? Well, this next line is so powerful to me. Actually, we were fooling ourselves, for deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or other, it was there. For faith in a power greater than ourselves and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself.
Yep. So we're basically going to come at this from an angle that for deep down inside, every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God, and Bill is going to kind of put that at your feet so that you can kind of learn from the standpoint that it's always been there. God's always been there. Your higher power's always been there. It's um, the idea that and in doing so is kind of coming to it from the it's as it's always been there. It is one of those situations where you kind of have to wake up and go, wait a minute, you're right, this was that, that type of thing, um and there it is. Rob.
Yeah, it's such a powerful, to me, it's such a powerful, line. Actually, we're fooling ourselves. For deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. So where is God? Deep down inside. All we have to do is look inside ourselves for God. We finally saw that faith in some kind of God was a part of our makeup, just as much as the feeling we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but He was there. He was as much a fact as we were. We found the great reality deep down within us. In the last analysis, it is only there that He may be found. So with us.
Yeah. So we're basically what Rob had just said, which is that deep down inside, and it's that fearless search, this really kind of complete, open-minded, open eyes, ears, all of your senses basically, and just digging down deep and finding that you've got this belief, which then is turns into faith. Um, um, so it's there, and Bill is basically conveying that to us in such a way that is just basically a really kind of digging down deep in it. That is a very kind of, for me, it was pretty powerful in that once I finally was accepting and open-minded about the idea, is when things started happening, and that's what we're discovering here in this part of the book. Rob?
Yeah, Bill wants us to stop trying to intellectualize God. Start looking with the heart. Let's stop using this and trying to figure out what God is and all this thing. Think with your heart. And it's a whole another way of doing it. Now, and the other thing is, and I've mentioned this last week and at other times, God is like the wind. You don't see God, but what you see is the effects. Okay, you see the leaf blowing by on the grass, the trees blowing the breeze. God is like the wind. You can't see it, but you can see the effects. So then we look back at our past and all the things that have happened in our lives. When have I been kept out of tragic situations? When has God looked after me when I couldn't look after myself? There's a beautiful poem called Footprints in the Sand. It's read a lot in Toronto. And the idea is that, walking along the beach, you see two footprints in the sand behind you. One is God, and the other is yourself. And then all of a sudden, at the most difficult times in your life, you only see one set of footprints in the sand. So the person turns to God and says, God, why did you desert me at these times, most troubled times of my life? And he says, child, when you only saw the one set of footprints in the sand, it was because I was carrying you. You know how deep and profound that is. We can only clear the ground a bit. If our testimony helps sweep away prejudice, enables you to think honestly, encourages you to search diligently within yourself, then, if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway. With this attitude, you cannot fail. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things with this paragraph here. One, I think it's incredible in that this one could go on a poster as well. I think this whole part of this um, here, much like what Rob was just describing with the footprints on the sand. The second thing is that the sweep away prejudice is kind of a reference to step one, and then enables you to think honestly is kind of a tie into step two, and then search diligently within yourself um, um, is kind of a reference to step three, and then with this attitude you cannot fail. The idea is that you want to open your mind, open your heart, really dig down and look. The it's a it's pretty powerful to get to that point. With this attitude, you cannot fail. That's again, like I said, this whole passage here, I think, could go on a poster and work really well. It's part of the spiritual awakening that we're trying to get the non-believer to at least start to understand and know. And with that, you know, it's a good beginning, a good beginning. Rob?
Yeah, it is a great beginning. And we're going to read the story. So, Leo, I'm going to read the whole story, and then it's going to be a little bit.
Okay.
So we're at the bottom of page 55, everybody. In this book, you will read the experience of a man who thought he was an atheist. His story is so interesting that some of it should be told now. His change of heart was dramatic, convincing, and moving. Our friend was a minister's son. He attended church school, where he became rebellious at what he thought was an overdose of religious education. For years thereafter, he was dogged by trouble and frustration. Business failure, insanity, fatal illness, suicide. These calamities in his immediate family embittered and depressed him. Post-war disillusionment, even more serious alcoholism, impending mental and physical collapse brought him to the point of self-destruction. One night, when confined in a hospital, he was approached by an alcoholic who had known a spiritual experience. Our friend's gorge rose as he bitterly cried out, "If there is a God, he certainly hasn't done anything for me." But later, alone in his room, he asked himself this question: is it possible that all the religious people I've known are wrong? While pondering the answer, he felt as though he lived in hell. Then, like a thunderbolt, a great thought came. It crowded out all else. Who are you to say there is no God? This man recounts that he tumbled out of bed to his knees. In a few seconds, he was overwhelmed by the conviction of the presence of God. It poured over and through him with the certainty and majesty of a great tide at flood. The barriers he had built through the years were swept away. He stood in the presence of infinite power and love. He had stepped from bridge to shore. For the first time, he lived in conscious companionship with his Creator. Thus was our friend's cornerstone fixed in place. No later vicissitude had shaken it. His alcohol problems taken away. That very night, years ago, it disappeared, save for a few brief moments of temptation. The thought of drink has never returned. And at such time, a great revulsion has risen up in him. Seemingly, he could not drink even if he wanted. God had restored his sanity.
Absolutely. We're talking about Fitz Mayo. He was considered number three in New York as far as sober, number recovered alcoholic, and his sobriety date was November in November of 1935. His story is on page 208. So it's a good story in that there's the resistance to this whole idea of God and a creator and a kind of a spiritual being, in part because he had been overwhelmed with it as a young person, and growing up with it, felt like he had just had too much of it, which is not uncommon for some of us. His resistance was there, but then he has a thought, which is I think is a pretty incredible that he got there. Is that, can everybody else that he knows that actually does believe, can they all be wrong? And if that was the case, then there's a lot of people that would be wrong. And so what he realizes is that they aren't. And with that comes this thunderbolt, as he says, and then who are you to say that there is no God? And so he accepts it. He has this overwhelming and powerful experience, and gets to his knees, and he's now having this spiritual experience. And with that comes this new power and capability to be sober, stay sober, and be recovered. I think it also goes beyond that too, in that when you start to have this spiritual experience, you want to have this spiritual life and live it in other areas of your life as well. But in this case, he has a few brief moments of temptation, but otherwise, and I know in the beginning when I was really new in my sobriety, there were those triggers, those things that came up, but I was quickly able to bring up this being and this higher power, and actually be able to resist the whole temptation of it. The same thing holds true for Fitz Mayo. Rob?
Yeah, Fitz was not the only one that had an overdose of religious education. Dr. Bob, Dr. Bob, his father was a Sunday school teacher, and Dr. Bob felt the same way about religion, that once he was at a certain age, he wasn't going to darken the doors of another church. He had had enough. Dr. Bob's mother used to put him to bed at 5 o'clock at night. Now, I know there was no TV back in the early days, but still, 5 o'clock in the morning is still, or I'm sorry, 5 o'clock at night is still early to go to bed at night. And Dr. Bob used to sneak out. Then Fitz here talks about business failure, insanity, fatal illness, suicide, all these calamities in the immediate family embittered and depressed him. So he thought, what type of God is there? Bill Wilson, our founder, felt the same way. If there is a God, where is he? Why are all these things happening in the world? Today we look at all the warring factions and all the things that are going on, people going hungry, and it's not because of God, it's because it's a lack of God. The whole idea about getting God into your life is the fact that we think about others. We look after other people. When you're selfish and self-centered, you're only thinking about yourself. We went through life this way. I know I did myself. I only thought about myself. Now, today, we have to change our life around. We get spirituality into our life. What can I do for our fellow man? So please keep that in mind. We're on page 57, everybody. What is this but a miracle of healing? Yet its elements are simple. Circumstances made him willing to believe. He humbly offered himself to his Maker. Then he knew. Even so has God restored us all to our right mind. To this man, the revelation was sudden. Some of us grow into it more slowly. But he has come to all who have honestly sought him. When we drew near to him, he disclosed himself to us.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice little closing here for this particular chapter, and that is that if you honestly open your mind and your heart, as we've said, and fearlessly search, you're going to find this higher power and have this spiritual experience. It might be sudden for some of us. Other ones, it's going to come along a little bit more slowly and in bits in piece by piece. So this spiritual awakening is over time will actually finally get you to where you want to be. We bottom line is we need to find something more powerful than ourselves. And I'm going to go back and say that at the beginning, you just need to believe, and that there is the possibility of there being a higher power. And then that turns into faith, basically. So belief comes first and faith comes after. And I think a lot of people, I hear it more than not, but I think a lot of people come to AA a little bit agnostic and resistant to the whole idea of this higher power and this spiritual kind of being, this higher power that you've got that can help you out. It's quite powerful once it happens, and there's this kind of flood of emotion and good feeling that happens when it does happen. Rob?
Yeah. Bill's talked in the book so far. He gave his own experience, and he's talked about Fitzmail, who both had white light experiences. They found God suddenly. They were brought to their knees. That doesn't happen to most of us. I know for myself, it was very slow. People around us notice we are thinking more about other people than ourselves. When we get this spiritual experience. uh, gradually, and that's why they put the spiritual experience in the back of the book. It's because most people thought, well, I haven't had this white light experience. I haven't had, this, I'm supposed to have it. You had it. Why don't I get it? And Bill just explains, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but it will materialize if we work for it. So we now are off to Chapter 5, How It Works. Now, this is something that is read I can talk about Toronto. In every meeting that I went to, everybody, it would be first thing that's read. Most people don't pay attention to it. They keep asking, well, how does this program work? But everybody is so busy getting coffee, getting set in their seats, talking to their neighbor who they haven't seen for a couple of meetings, So now we're going to read how it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. They are such unfortunate. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those too who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest.
I think that the big thing here is honesty. It's that being open-minded and being totally 100% honest. And it starts out is that, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. But then it jumps right down to the person that doesn't recover and why. The idea here is that if you draw from that you can say, if you are capable of being honest with yourself, and we're not talking about just telling somebody else that you want to recover or that you say the words. It's really that deep down inside honesty that you want to have with your own private and personal self. It does talk about others that are incapable of being honest. Some are born that way. Others have got less than the average capability of being honest. And I think it's so some of us in the beginning, I think, are not as I think being totally honest with yourself is kind of a learned capability. I think it just seems to me that this is something that you have to really, question yourself and sit and think and be with it for a while And then as you kind of continually dig deeper and deeper and become more and more honest, I think that's when things really start to happen and that higher power starts to reveal itself, and go from there. Rob?
Yeah, I just want to point out a couple of things. Rarely have we seen a person fail. Oh, there's talks in the room about Bill wanted to change that to never. Well, according to Bill talking himself, he never thought about changing that. He never wanted to give the medical people a chance. Just if one person fails, there goes your never. So rarely. I put a comment in the chat if you get a chance to read it and what Bill actually said. And if you want to know what the website is, that where it came from, I can give you that too. But also, I want to point out that Bill uses honest 3 times in that one paragraph. So what is this all about? We have to get honest with ourselves, okay? Honest with the people around us. We have to be honest. So many times we have tried to, tell white lies, fibs, we haven't been honest with ourselves. We have to get honest. Who we are, what we are. We're on page 58, everybody. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. At some of these we bought. We thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we could not. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go. Absolutely.
And this is part of what I was saying earlier, is that idea is that you've got to kind of work yourself into it, in that you feel like you're being honest, but you're not quite there because there are still things that you're holding on to, and that you need to let go of. And the idea here is that once you start to really sit down and open your mind and your heart, and you're totally honest, that's when things are going to start happening. And you have to really want what the others that have gone before you and recovered has. The certain steps that they're talking about are all the 12 steps, and this whole idea is leading up to a psychic change. The point being is that this is something that's learned. It's something that's practiced, and it's something that you have to really dig deep in order to get. Rob?
Yeah, half measures availed us. Nil. Nothing. Bupkis. One of the major problems that I've seen is that people come into the fellowship, they stop drinking for a short period of time, things start to get a little bit better in their life. Why? Because they're not, the allergy, where they can't control the amount they take. Well, they haven't taken any alcohol, so they've been able to show up for work on time. They've been there for their family. They've been there for their friends. They got a few dollars in their pocket because they haven't spent it all. Things seem to get a little bit better. Okay, they seem to get better. So they think, well, maybe I'm making too hard go of this, and that maybe I'm not really an alcoholic. That's the obsession of the mind talking. So they go back out. They don't think they need to do the rest of the program because things are getting better for them. But it says here that some of these we balked. Okay, stopped short of completion. Okay, we tried to avoid doing them. Okay, we didn't do all the steps. We didn't continue on with the program. Remember, this is just part of the program. Steps 1, 2, and 3 will keep us sober for a short period of time, but they won't keep us sober forever. Why? Because we really haven't done anything. We've admitted we were powerless over alcohol. We admitted that our life was unmanageable. Okay, we have said, but we haven't done anything yet. Okay, so we need to continue on with the program. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who is all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked protection and care with complete abandon.
Yeah. And so the idea here, when you talk about complete abandon, it is a surrender. So you have to be honest, you have to be willing, and you have to be in a position so that you can surrender yourself over to this higher power. And really now is the only time you can actually do something. So the idea here is that you they want you to find him now. And part of this, we can go back to page 45, where about a fourth of the way down, this next first full paragraph, it's this lack of power. That was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously, but where and how were we to find this power? And the idea here is that you've got to really dig down deep inside and find it. Remember, we can't remember. We're fallible in that regard. And alcohol is really it gets the best of us, and it hangs on for a long time, and it's very powerful itself. But what you're trying to do is to find something that's even more powerful than that, and having that enter your life and give you that ability to recover. Rob?
Yeah, half measures availed us nothing. If we just going through part of this isn't going to solve our problem. We stood at the turning point. Okay. Do we want to continue with this? Or we don't think it's going to work for us. Okay. We asked his protection with complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs.
Yeah. So,
sorry, go ahead, Leo. No, you go ahead.
Yep, I was just going to say these are the 12 steps, and if you were to break these down, I've got a couple of things I'll share with you. The first steps are the foundation steps, verse 1, 2, and 3. We know as that's what they're called, the foundation steps. Steps 4 through 9 are action steps. 4 through 9 is the action steps, and then the steps 10, 11, and 12 are growth or maintenance steps. Growth or maintenance steps. And then if you were to break down each one of these, we admitted we were, so step 1 is your honesty step. Step 2 is the hope step. Step 3 is the faith step. So honesty, hope, and faith in the first 3 steps. Step 4 is your courage step. Step 5 is the integrity step. Step 6 is the willingness step. Step 7 is the humility step. And step 8 is the forgiveness step. And step 9 is the justice step. Step 10 is perseverance step. Step 11 is your awareness step. And step 12 is the service step. I think that there's the couple of other points to make in this is that you're asking your higher power to remove all the defects of character, not just some, but all of them, and making a list of persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And that's another one of those things that is 100%. It's one that you really want to adhere to. And then on top of that, I would say that in step 9, the willing to make amends, your biggest amend is to your higher power. And the whole idea of these steps are to find yourself in a much better place in your life and living your life in a spiritual way that changes everything. And again, the idea is that you want to find your higher power now. Rob?
When are we going to find God?
Now.
Now. As Katie J always said, now.
Yeah.
I love that. Yep. Many of us exclaimed, what an order. I can't go through with it. Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if he were sought.
Absolutely. So many of us exclaimed, what an order. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence. This is a really good passage. It is basically perfection is not what we're striving for. You're always working on it, but the idea is that you're doing the best you can with what you have. And utilizing your higher power in such a way that it changes everything for the positive in your life. But to be perfect and doing this would be basically, as they refer to as a saint, and we're not saints. So the idea here is that you're claiming spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. The description of the alcoholic, the chapter on the agnostic, and our personal adventures, which are the stories that we've read, both Bill's story as well as the ones that are in the back. That gives you 3 pertinent ideas, and that's the steps that you're going to take and the process that you're going to go through. One. You could not manage your own lives. Things had become unmanageable because of this cunning, baffling, and powerful thing called alcohol. Your human power can't relieve you of your alcoholism. You need to find something higher and bigger than human power. And then again, that God could and would if he were sought. So this is just basically a summation of where we are and what we're trying to accomplish. And Bill basically says that this is the tenets of what we're actually doing in order to recover from the as they say, the seemingly hopeless state of mind and body in our alcoholism. Rob?
Yeah, remember that after we have done the steps, they turn into principles that we live. So the steps turn into principles that we live by. And Bill always gives us a way out. We are not saints. We're going to make mistakes. Okay? But we now have step 10 and 11 where, when we make mistakes, what do? We rectify it. When? Now. We deal with it now. Before, what would happen is that we would push them under the rug. Push them under the rug. I couldn't think of the word there for a second. Push them under the rug. We wouldn't deal with them. And what happens? They become bigger and bigger and bigger in our mind. When we deal with it right away, if I make a mistake, I go to Leo. Leo, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it the way it came out. How can I make it up to you? Okay, I've dealt with it. Instead, if I don't deal with it, I go back. I start thinking, boy, Leo was really, I wasn't really nice to Leo. I said something I shouldn't have. Then after a while, geez, Leo was kind of mean to me, and I turn it around and then it becomes a resentment. Then I become spiritually sick. I get cut off from source. I get cut off from God, you know? But if I deal with it right away, it's done, it's over with. I don't need to roll it around in my brain. My small brain will make it into a big thing, you know? And I love here, we claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. I'm never going to be perfect. I know it. God knows it. Everybody else knows it. Okay. But what I can do is I have these steps that will help me deal with life on life's terms. When bad things happen, I deal with it. I know that tomorrow will be a better day. You know, there's a lot of things that happen in life that I don't understand. Why would God let this happen? Why is this happening? Why is that happening? Is God taking me to a better place? Why do people that I love get sick? I don't know. It's above my pay grade, but I have to have faith that God is doing the best he can do and that there's a reason for everything. And one day I might understand. Today I don't. It's above my pay grade. And that's the way I look at it. In the original manuscript that Bill wrote, after the ABC, there was a line in it that he took out. And I love this line because I think it's quite humorous. And the line is, if you are not convinced on these vital issues, you ought to reread the book to this point or else throw it away. I think that is brilliant because if you don't believe it, and there are people that don't, they aren't ready for it. They don't think they're a real alcoholic. Okay. They still think they can control and enjoy their drinking. Then by all means, go back out because you're going to eventually. Okay? But if you are not convinced in these vital issues, reread up to this point or throw it away. I love that. Being convinced, we were at step 3, which is that we decided to turn our will and our life over to the care of God as we understood him. Just what do we mean by that? And just what do we do?
Well, this is kind of this thinking and actions that are required here. And we're talking about being convinced. We were at step 3. So we're just at the beginning of step 3, which is what we're about to kind of go through. And that is that we are willing to turn our will and our life over to God as we understood him. And when we talk about that, it's your understanding of a higher power, not necessarily everybody else's understanding. So, and we've talked a little bit about what constitutes a higher power and what really isn't a higher power. So when they ask this question, what do we mean by that? And just what do we do? Bill's going to answer that for us as we're going to go forward. Rob?
Yep. The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. On that basis, we are almost always in collision with something or somebody. Even though our motives are good, most people try to live by self-propulsion. Each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. If his arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as he wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including himself, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. In trying to make these arrangements, our actor may sometimes be quite virtuous. He may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest, self-sacrificing. On the other hand, he may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. But as with most humans, he is more likely to have varied traits.
Yeah, we're going to mix and match here a little bit on good days or on days that things are going this in this person's way, is that they probably are more of the things that were described here: kind, considerate, patient, and generous. On other days, this idea of being mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest, I can tell you that I've mixed and matched those myself. In some cases, more of the mean, dishonest, and egotistical stuff that I'm not pleased to say that I suffer from. But let's go back to the beginning here. The first requirement is that we be convinced that any life run on self-will can hardly be a success, meaning that your self-knowledge and your self will is not going to is not going to be successful, because you just no human power is going to be able to overcome this ability to recover from alcoholism. And in doing so, you're going to be prone to mistakes and problems, even though your intentions are good. Now, we refer to this, and I think that this goes, we come back to it a number of times with regard to this actor running the whole show and arranging the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in their own way. It's that controlling kind of behavior. You want to try to have control over it, and that kind of that analogy, or that it equates over to this trying to control your alcoholism and finding that you really can't. It is a reference to that inability from a human power to stop drinking and stay stopped. It's frustrating. It's maddening in some cases. It really does get you. But the idea here is that you want to dig deep, as we've already talked about, and open your mind and heart to finding a higher power. And kind of just as a general reference here, from page 60, 61, and 62, we are dealing with the human condition, which afflicts all of us, regardless of whether or not we are alcoholic or not. And so there's a good reference here just to show that some of this stuff is that everybody suffers from and experiences as part of the human condition. Rob?
Yeah, the next paragraph, I'm going to change he to me, or to I, and just see how it changes the feeling of it. What usually happens, the show doesn't come off very well. I begin to think life doesn't treat me great. I decide to exert myself more. I become, on the next occasion, still more demanding or gracious, as the case may be. Still, the play does not suit me. Admitting I may be somewhat at fault, I am sure that other people are more to blame. I become angry, indignant, self-pitying. What is my basic trouble? Am I not really a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? Am I not a victim of the delusion that I can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if only I manage well? Is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things I want? And do not my actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show? Am I not, even in my best moments, a producer of confusion rather than harmony?
Yeah. And this is what we do, and this is what we are. And Rob, thanks for changing he over to I or me. And there is a bit of self-pity that is conveyed here. And the idea here is that you want what you want, and it's sometimes it's unfair to others. Other times it's not. But the bottom line is that you are. It's baggage, and it's a stumbling block to your sobriety to think in this way as far as that is concerned. Rob?
Yeah, and you know, what I just read is all about self. how I want this, I need that, and what we're trying to do is take self out of the picture. When I wake up in the morning in step 11, I ask God to take self out of the equation so that I can do His work. What would you have me be? Okay? Because I wake up in the morning and it's all about me. Well, what do I want? You know? And then I realize, no, no, no. Take self out of the picture. What would God have me do? What would God have me be? And whenever I'm in doubt, I ask God, what do you want from me at this moment? What is your will for me? Take self out of the picture. I tried to do everything for myself and it turned terrible. It didn't work. Why? Because people aren't going to do things the way I think they should do it. Pete, why don't you do this or do that? Well, Pete's got his own mind and his own way of doing things. So, and then I get upset because Pete did what he's going to do. Who am I hurting? Myself. Instead of, hey, that's the way Pete's going to do what he's going to do, when he's going to do it. I can't control Pete. And the quicker I come to that realization, the happier I will be because I will not be disappointed with what Pete does. Well, why didn't Pete do my way? Not the way life works. Leo, it is 12:53. Do we want to bring Mr. Bill in?
Yes, sir, we do. Thank you very much.
Hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey. Thanks a lot, guys. Good job today. A lot of information in here. Well, we started off, we agnostics, and Bill was telling us where we can find God. The deep down inside every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. In other words, we don't have to look on the highest mountain or down in the deepest sea. All we have to do is look deep down inside of ourselves. That's where we're going to find what we're looking for. So that's the point Bill's trying to get across to us here with this. He's giving us some logical reasons why we need to find God and where we can find God. And then it talks about this guy, Fitzmayo. He had a spiritual experience when he was in the town's hospital, and Bill Wilson talked to him while he was in the town's hospital, and Bill was able to help this guy get sober. And after he got sober, he tumbled out of bed or whatever and said, "Who are you to say there is no God?" And that's basically the description of his spiritual experience that he had. And again, the whole purpose of going through this whole process is to have a spiritual experience or a spiritual awakening so that will bring about recovery. And Bill's not trying to convince anybody of who God is or what God is or anything like that. Bill's just trying to convince us that we have a need for God. Because we're powerless over alcohol, we need a power greater than ourselves in our life. That's really what he's trying to get, the point he's trying to get across to us with that chapter, We Agnostics. And we went into how it works. Probably the most read thing in AA and the least understood. Right in the first paragraph, like was already mentioned, it uses the word honest 3 times. That means honest is going to be really important. And they're not talking about cash register honesty. They're talking about being honest with yourself. You've got to be honest with yourself over what happens to you when you drink and whether or not you need some kind of help or whatever. And if you're not going to get honest with yourself, you're going to have a hard time getting this. Then in the next paragraph, he tells us what going to any length means. It means you're ready to take certain steps. It doesn't mean you're going to go to meetings in the middle of the night and 5 meetings a day and a meeting's 100 miles away. It just means you're ready to do the steps. That's all going to any length means. So what Bill did here, he gave us 3 requirements in this first little essay here on how it works. He gave us 3 requirements for sobriety. 1, we have to be honest. 2, we have to be willing to go to any length. And on the top of the next page, said we have to surrender to God. And abandon ourselves to God. Abandon means surrender. So those are 3 requirements in order to get this. Then he lists all the steps, and it says, here are the steps we took It doesn't say here are the steps we sat around and talked about taking. You have to take these steps. You have to do them in order for it to work. And then it tells us half measures avail us nothing. How come half measures avail us nothing? If you play baseball and you just run halfway to first base, you're not going to get anywhere. We got to do this all the way. Halfway doesn't work. You can't be halfway sober. You're either sober or you're not. So doing stuff halfway is not. Measures refers to like using your willpower or your choice and trying to think the drink through. That stuff isn't going to work for us. And then he basically told us that he gave us the ABCs on page 60, and that's basically step 1 and step 2. So what Bill's doing is making a declaration that step 1 and step 2 have been completely covered by this book at this point. And after step 2, the next thing it says, being convinced, we were at step 3. So after you got A, B, and C, that's when you move on to step 3. And then he starts giving us requirements and starts talking about step 3. And there's too much to get into step 3 here, but basically all this is telling us is what we need to do in order to get sober. That's pretty much all I got. Thanks a lot for letting me share.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, let's go ahead and close out with the serenity prayer, and we'll open things up.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.